Welcome back to this Blender for Beginners tutorial series. In our last video, we created the last of our materials and made a basic render of our scene. We went over some of the basic rendering settings and how to just make a little scene. So in order to make our final scene, we need to add a room to this to put everything into. Let's start by going to Top View. Shift A to add a plane and move that plane on the Y 1 meter. That'll be -1 meter so that the back edge is on the 0 plane. And let's take everything else. Control I will select the inverse and move it on the Y till it's just in front of the wall. We'll take our lamp and move that flat against. At least it's against where our wall will be. Now we want our cube to be about 2.3 meters wide. So we can make sure that our rotation and scale is correct and make this 2.3. That's going to move on the X to a point where the vanity is not against the wall. There's some space there. And we want the depth of our floor, or the Y-axis dimensions of our floor, to be about 2.94. I'm going off of the experiments I've done in making the tutorial in the first place. I'm going to take this edge, put our cursor on it, and we're going to make that the origin of our object. That way we can move the object to 0 on the Y, and it's right back where we want that back wall to be. Now, we also are going to need walls. So let's go into edit mode, and it might be easier if we're in solid select mode. We'll take this face and we are going to extrude it 9 feet, which is 2.7432 meters. If we're being very exact here. Now we have a room and we can't see anything inside of it. Let's separate the ceiling and the floor from our walls. And actually, let's do them individually. Okay, now those are separate objects. We can select them and hide them. Our walls need to have a little bit of thickness to them. So let's add a Solidify Modifier. And before we do that, let's make sure our faces are facing inward. By default, they would be facing out. So let's take all of our faces and Shift N and check this box that says inside. There we have our inside out box. And actually, while we're doing this, I can see 2 other objects that have reversed normals. So let's go into edit mode, select all faces, Shift N, and it should put them all on the outside. I'm actually surprised there were no more normals than that were reversed. We're doing pretty well here. Alright, now let's add our Solidify Modifier. And we're going to give them a little bit of thickness. Now, the reason we're giving them thickness, it's not like you're going to be able to see the outside of the wall, is because we're going to be using a Boolean modifier to punch a hole in this wall. And a Boolean modifier does not work properly on a flat plane. So we need to add some thickness to the wall for the Boolean operator to work correctly. At this point, we can unhide our window, and we're going to rotate that -90. I'm not sure what I just did there. We're going to rotate -90. Move it about here. And we want this seam to line up pretty close with the wall. So let's move this on the x-axis until it's right there. And now we cannot see through our wall, and we also have our window on the floor. So let's move that up on the Z and make it just even with the ceiling. No, this is not the final resting place for it. We're going to put it right there. And let's go to DuckDuckGo, and we're going to figure out just how far a foot measures in meters. So let's go over to DuckDuckGo. As it turns out, a foot is this. So let's copy this value, 0.3048. Let's make sure that we are very close to even with the ceiling. Press G, Z, negative, Control V, and that will paste in the value that we just copied out of our browser. Hit enter, and now our window is right where we want it. So now that we have the window where we want it, let's add a Boolean modifier. So let's put our cursor right there on the selected, Shift A, cube, and scale down to a point where the edges of this cube would not be visible. And I'm talking about the faces going around this way will not be visible because the trim will hide them. Let's go into wireframe mode so we can see that bottom face, and move that down just below the sill, or within the sill. There we go. Now, Control A, rotation and scale. We need to, before we apply any kind of modifiers, we need to make sure our scale is 1:1, and you see that our walls are not. So rotation and scale, and let's make sure our wall is no thicker than the frame of our window, and that is fine right there. So let's select our walls, go to our modifier panel, and add a Boolean modifier. Now what a Boolean modifier is you can either intersect, create a union, or a difference, as you can see across here, with another object. In this case, if we create a difference with this cube, there is now a hole in this wall. If we hide the cube, we can see that hole. And there we have it, a hole in our wall where the window is. It looks pretty good where it is. So if we unhide everything and move our Boolean operator cube to another collection, we can hide that collection and it'll still be an active object. So let's say bools for booleans, even though it's the only Boolean object in our scene. Let's go down here and disable that layer. And now we can see into our bathroom. If we put on perspective mode, we can kind of come around here. And that looks a whole lot better just adding a window. Let's go to 0, and that is the camera view. Select that camera, and we're running into a problem here where in order for the camera to be back far enough to see everything, it is outside of the wall. And this point is the point at which you're looking from at the camera. Let's go into wireframe mode, and we're going to reset our camera. Alt-G should put it right back at the world origin. We'll hit 0 to go into camera view, And our aspect ratio is not what we want it to be in our final render. What I'm going for is a 4:3 ratio, or rather a 3:4, the other way around. 1080 by 1350 is that ratio, and that's actually an image size that Instagram likes. So if you're posting your progress or your final render on Instagram, you don't have to do any kind of cropping or anything like that. Often you have to make things a square for Instagram, and they do accept this aspect ratio and this exact resolution as well. So let's rotate this camera a bit. And let's go into the camera view again. Bring it up somewhat to about, I don't know. Well, we can always move things. But that looks about right there. And hit G, middle mouse button, and scroll out a bit until we see the legs of it. And that's probably fine right there. We see kind of the top corner of the room as well. But you'll notice we still have our problem. We are outside the room. So a quick and easy way to resolve that is to just put a bump out in the room. I don't want to move this entire wall because we want this wall to show up well in the reflection of that mirror. And I've found when playing with this scene that if we put the wall further back, it doesn't really show up in the mirror very well, and it looks like a giant empty room. So let's take this face here that we've just created. We hit Control R and put a cut here, and we're going to extrude to a point past where the camera will be. And we're getting this funny shape, you know, all these different angles. What we can do is take this top face, and we can't see the face that we're selecting because of our Solidify modifier. So delete that and take the floor and delete that. And let's make sure that our modifier is set to always have an even thickness. Alright, our ceiling will need a cut in the same spot as will our floor. I'm just putting it down the center. And we will extrude this to a point where it covers any gap in the floor. We'll do the same with the ceiling. Now our room is closed in again. Let's rename these things so that we know what they are. I'm going to hide both the floor and the ceiling so that we can work with our room a little better, a little more easily rather. And let's check out our camera view. Let's hit home, and that doesn't look too bad. So we still have this big empty space over here, and we're going to want to fill that up with some objects. We don't want to do any more modeling. I think we've done quite a bit of that already. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to append objects that either you or another artist have already created in another blend file. Let's get two different blend files. One is going to be a plant and one is going to be a toilet. And we're going to go to blendswap.com in order to get those. You will need a user account in order to download anything. It doesn't cost anything, you just need to give it an email address. This is BlendSwap. Once you have created a user account, go to the search, and we're going to look for a toilet. You'll get all kinds of options. There were a lot to scroll through. I didn't really like most of them. In fact, this one is the one I settled on. To download any model on BlendSwap, or any resource really, it doesn't have to be a model, there are textures as well, a few other things I believe. We just hit download, and if you are logged in, you'll get your download dialog box. Another object we will want to get from BlendSwap is a plant. So let's type plant. And we can scroll and scroll and scroll, and there will be a lot of plants. The plant we want is called Indoor Plant in a Pot. Very descriptive, but it is this one right here. You'll see it is a CC0 license. CC0 meaning you can make any modifications, redistribute it however you want. You can make money from it if you wanted in a scene, whatever you want to do. You'll notice that our toilet was not that license. Let's go back there. You'll notice that our toilet is a CC BY Creative Commons license. A Creative Commons BY, I forget what BY stands for, but it simply means that you need to credit the author if you are to use this in a scene. So the creator here is that name. I don't know how to pronounce that. However, wherever you put this on Instagram, ArtStation, wherever, you want to make sure that you just say that, you know, the toilet in this scene was created by this person, and maybe put a link to where you got the model as well. You know, it's just good etiquette. Not that anyone's ever going to care, but they do request that you do that, so you might as well do that. You would want someone to credit your work as well. Once you have downloaded these files, you're going to need to extract them to a location somewhere. If you're using Windows, the way to extract your files is to simply right-click and extract, and hit extract. Once you've extracted both, or unzipped, you can just delete the originals. Let's open up one of our new extracted folders, and you'll see that there is an HTML with the license here. This will tell you exactly what you should do when using this model in artwork that someone else is going to see. As you can see in this license agreement, you are free to use this asset privately for any use you see fit. If you choose to distribute copies or modified versions of this asset, you must do so under the following requirements. And the only requirement is that you mention the author of this blend in your copies and derivative works. So in your blend file, you can create text fields and you could put that in there. You can do that when you're posting it somewhere as well. Just mention the name of the person or the artist that you got it from on BlendSwap. Let's open up the blend file, and you can see the state in which the author left this. So it basically, when you open it up, it shows everything just as you were looking at it the last time you closed it. So you can see that there's a camera, there's a sun lamp. We don't need either of those. We'll hit delete. And it looks like things are parented to this empty. So let's move that around, see if that's the case. Yes, that is true. In my opinion, I already deleted the light, so there we go. In my opinion, this hose and knob don't look very good, or they don't match the style of what we are doing, so we're going to delete those. And I am deleting that camera and that light again. I just had to turn them back on so I could show you the rendered view. And we're going to not use the materials that they have on here. So this is a chance to see another use for the outliner. At the top, let's go into Blend or Blender File, and this will show you all the different kinds of data that are in this blend file. We're going to go to Materials, and we're going to select all of them and hit delete. That was a right-click delete rather than hitting delete on the keyboard. You can see that the header of this 3D viewport is at the bottom, That used to be the default before Blender 2.8. The header was at the foot of the window. Yes, that is, it does not make sense, and that is probably why it was changed. Anyway, now we have no materials on this object at all because they've all been removed. If we select this and hit the tab for material, you can see that there are material slots with nothing in them. So to continue our cleanup, let's get rid of those. Select everything and remove the material slots from them as well. Alright. Let's save this blend file. Let's change back to View Layer. And you can see that everything is named. And the empty is called Toilet Master. So let's save again with this view. Let's close out of this blend file and we'll go back to our file manager. Back in our file manager, we're going to go to Indoor Plant. You can see the license there as well, and that is there are no requirements for this license. Open up our file, and the only thing we're going to do here is eliminate all the objects that are not the potted plant. This is the material setup for the leaves, it would appear. We're not going to go through all that. You can pick it apart if you like, but this is not a tutorial on in-depth material creation. So we're going to save this as it is. And in fact, if everything is not parented to something, we're going to do that. So select all, and we're going to parent to the pot. Alright. And it's just called cylinder. Let's call this potted plant. Control S for save and close out of it. Back in our blend file, let's put our cursor over here somewhere. And we're going to go to File, and we want to append an object from another blend file. So let's hit that and go to the place we want to be, the place we saved these and extracted them. We'll go to Toilet, open Toilet, and we're going to go to Object. Select all of the objects and hit Append. Let's find the toilet empty. So that is called Toilet Master. Let's take this down to the room. It looks like we did not create a collection for the room. So let's just take it out to the top. Let's collapse some things so that we can make better sense of what we're looking at. Let's create a new collection for room. We're going to take our ceiling, our floor, our walls, and move them to room. There we go. What is this plane? That is our mirror. Alright. Now that we have our toilet in the scene, let's select the Toilet Master. You can see all the objects are here. And we're going to move that on every axis except Z, so X and Y. Shift Z. And turn off snapping. And we have a problem. Why can't we see them? It's because our toilet is bigger than the room. So without selecting all of the toilet, just keep the master object, or the empty object that everything is parented to, selected, and scale that down. Go to 0, and we can get it exactly sized if we want, but having the top of the tank roughly even with the top of the vanity should be alright. We'll bring that over here. It can be completely in view if you like. I want to move my camera up a little bit. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now we want to have our shelf that we created earlier on over top. So let's enable our shelf and see where it is. It is right here. It looks like we haven't parented anything with this yet, so let's put our cursor to selected and select the different portions of the shelf. That cursor didn't matter. I was going to put an empty there, but we don't need to. So, Control P, Object. Now when we move this around, it'll be perfectly fine. So let's move that up on the Z and over on the X. That might be a bit high, but before we place that, we want to figure out how high we want our tiling on the wall to be. The lower half or less than half of our wall is going to be tiling. Subway tile to be exact. There we go. Our shelf is now outside of the wall, and we should center it with the toilet. I'm not measuring anything, I'm just kind of putting it over top like that. Let's select our wall object and go into camera view, solid view, and go into tab, or tab into edit mode rather. Select nothing, and let's put an edge loop in here and take it all the way to the bottom. And then we're going to move it up 1.25, 1¼ meters. And that is where we're going to have our tiling end. Let's go into wireframe mode again so that we can see where that division is, and we're going to move our shelf down to just above it. Now, in our wall again, hit Tab, and what we're going to do with this is we're going to take the bottom portion here, all these faces, and we're going to hit P to separate to their own object. And let's call that object tiles. Now let's select everything, and we are going to scale along normals, along the normals of all the faces. So let's hit Alt S is our scale along normals, and we want to bring it in a little bit because our tiles are going to extend from the wall. They're not flush with the wall. And we still have our Solidify modifier on there, so it's going to continue working with our Boolean operator, which is over here. So now that we've created this object from the other object that had a Boolean applied to it, that modifier applies here as well. So that one cube is cutting a space out of both the top and the bottom. Let's go back to shaded mode, and we need to apply this Solidify because there's going to be a modification we need to make to this mesh, and that is to round out this top edge. So let's hit Apply on the Solidify, and we need to turn off our ceiling if it's not already. Hit Tab, grab this edge loop, and it should go the entire way around. It does. And we're going to bevel that. Give it a few edge loops. That should be fine right there. I don't know if we've made our tiles too thick or not. But if they're thicker than reality, it's just going to add to the contrast with more shadow and depth to it. And our mirror is outside, or inside. So let's move it outside of the tiles. It'll hang away from the wall a little bit, and that will also give us some more ambient occlusion, shadows and such here. It just adds a little more depth to the image as well. So there we have created our room, and we've appended one object. We want two more objects here. One is going to be that potted plant, which we'll just repeat the procedure we used here. And the other is going to be a ceramic Suzanne model. Suzanne is a monkey head that is basically the unofficial mascot of Blender. If we go to our Add menu, under Mesh, Monkey is down here. And there you can see Suzanne the monkey. Let's change it to Shade Smooth, add a Subdivision Surface modifier, scale it down, and we're going to set it on the shelf here. In this view, you can see that our toilet is somewhat inside the wall. So we can move that on the Y. It doesn't have to be exactly against, there's usually some gap. Alright, our monkey head is not on the shelf yet. There we go. Now let's append our potted plant. You'll see again that this scale is not correct unless the plant is intended to be rather large, which is entirely possible. Let's move it to where it will be on the shelf and scale it to something that works for us. Alright, I think that does it for our objects, all except for our oil diffuser and our towel holder. So let's turn those on, our towel ring. Aha, we did not parent anything there. So let's take the towel, parent it to the ring. Somewhere around there. And let's find our diffuser, which is hiding here. Did we parent things? We did not parent those either. Alright, so let's take these. We can't see them all because of the wall. Parent those as well. And then grab our object, our bottle. And we're going to move that on top of our toilet. And there we have assembled our scene, and we have some light coming through because we have no ceiling. There are a few materials to assign here, and that will be as simple as grabbing other objects and linking their data. Our toilet and all its pieces will have the ceramic material from this base. So that's an interesting toilet. And what we can do is go through these objects on the Material tab, remove Chrome. And this we actually want to be Chrome. And there we have that. Our glass shelf is going to have the same glass. These will have the same chrome. Suzanne will be ceramic as well. And then we have one more material, three more materials to create. The wall, the tiling, the towel, and the blinds. The trim around the window is going to be the same material as our cabinet, but we're going to change the color a bit. So now that we've assembled everything, we have a little bit of work to do, and then we are almost ready for our final render. So once these materials are done, we can set up our lighting and set up our final render settings, and that will be the end of this tutorial series. I hope you're getting excited to finally have your first scene created, and it's a fairly nice scene, I think, for a first scene. It's fairly photorealistic. So with that, save your file, and I will see you in the next video. Hey guys, if you found this video useful, hit like and consider subscribing to the channel, and you can turn on that notification bell too so that you don't miss future videos. Until next time, I'm Carl with BlenderForge.